So about just over 6 months ago now, we got the big story that there had been a lot of missing items suddenly at the British Museum, and that actually this had been going on for quite some time. This had been raised by people working at the British Museum who had suspicions of the guy who had been doing this. Artifacts had been seen, online on eBay, and said, "Hold on, that should be, in the British Museum, not on eBay." They go to look it up, and again, mysteriously gone. Now, this kicked off a big argument once again about things like the Elgin marbles and other things that the British Museum sort of has. I've said before, we've done a video about uh, the difficulties, the surrounding about that, and why that is difficult. But one of the things I think people misunderstood was that people generally thought that the British Museum had lost like big artifacts, like statues and swords and all kinds of stuff was being alleged now missing from the British Museum. However, that's not the case. We are now starting to see the picture of a lot of these missing items. Not surprisingly, of course, they are old sort of coins, gemstones, stuff that wasn't attached to sort of big items. And most of it, as we'll see in a moment, was gotten away with because the British Museum just has so much stuff. Like the archive section itself of the British Museum, huge. And I said this before in my last video, there's just so much stuff in the British Museum. The British Museum itself cannot put that stuff on display because there's just so much stuff there. There's stuff that is in the archive vaults that is actually from the UK that has never actually been shown in any display before at the British Museum. But there you go. People just get the idea of, bye, Fred, where are you going? Oh, I'm just, taking this bust out underneath my shirt. That's what people generally seem to think. That's what was going on, at the time. But, not the case. But I do want to talk about, at the moment, some of the efforts that are going on to try and actually find some of these missing artifacts, because they have actually been quite successful. They've so far managed to recover over 268 different missing artifacts from the stuff that had been stolen and had been, gone through this. So let's go through this because I really want to cover this because it's not something that sort of tends to get covered. This is some sort of major sort of not only archaeological sort of news, but almost a lot of really good detective work that has gone in to refinding a lot of these artifacts. So I think it's something that should be covered on this and should get sort of a bit more sort of attention than I think it really should. But anyway, before we do go on more into this, please do remember to click on the like, the share button, and of course, comment down below as well. I'm sure you've all got your own British Museum memes that you are dying to share down below. But of course, as always, before we do get on into that, like I say, click on the like, click on the share button. There's the Patreon page down below. There's the Buy Me Coffee link where you can buy me coffee. There's the YouTube thank you button. And of course, there's the Pony Club down below as well. So let's crack on then into this. This comes from the BBC News with the title of British Museum finds over 268 more missing artifacts. So the museum said that up to 2,000 items had gone missing or were damaged and which have been stolen from its storerooms and sold on eBay. A spokesperson for the operation said this is now a global operation with objects found all over the world. Last year, a senior member of staff suspected of being involved with the disappearance of these items was sacked. Dr. Peter Higgins, a senior curator with the museum's Greek and Roman department, has denied all the allegations. Due to a lack of cataloguing and records at the museum, it has now had trouble to provide recovering some of these items from its collections. So for now, it is trying to retrieve these objects back as donations. Chair of the British Museum, George Osborne, said that the detective work from the staff resulted in some of these lost recoveries and now back in the museum. He said, few expected to see the light of day. I even had my doubts, he said. More than over 600 of these objects are now back with us, with a further 100 now being identified. In total, almost half of the stolen items we can now recover. When we announced this devastating news that the objects had been stolen from our collection, people understandably assumed that we were unlikely to ever see more than a handful of them again. That is usually the story with thefts like this. So a number of these pieces, which were never even catalogued, but the museum is believed to have owned, were then sold on eBay for as little as a few pounds, and the true value of these items is still unknown. Arthur Band, an art detective who works with the police to recover these missing artifacts, said that, like many museums worldwide, the British Museum has had many things that are just not fully recorded. He said, "I'm surprised, and I don't think they will ever recover some of these pieces so quickly at all. Many were not even catalogued," he said to the BBC. This is not the only problem of the British Museum, but it's now a common problem in museums worldwide because of a lack of funding and an impressive amount of items. And this is the thing. This has been, as was said at the time, it was something that was bound to happen eventually, so that someone would do this because just the lack of cataloging, the lack of photos, and you'd think now maybe that this was the case, but no, someone's going to spend time organizing, cataloging, going through all these things, and the number of stories that come up in, you know, archaeological news or history magazines on history websites, more often than not, it's because someone had been going through these archives randomly or even sometimes just for fun and went, "Oh, wow, we actually have this object we never even knew we'd had because it had been in a box for like 20 years and no one had bothered to open it." Or, we have this book or this, piece of text that no one had ever done or, anything about. You want to know about the number of books that exist of like British historical texts, of contemporaries, of diaries, of all kinds of stuff that just haven't been looked at, catalogued, or anything like that? It is a huge amount of history that has not been really just had the time to be obsessed, because it's just, it's sheer time that it takes to sort of catalog and log them and all kind of stuff that goes on through that stuff. So it does just go to show you that this is yet another area of funding. And it's kind of funny because I can guarantee you could trace this back to austerity. And it's even weirder that, of course, George Osborne, the man responsible for austerity, is now one of the people chief in charge of the British Museum, ultimately responsible for the very problem he is now facing. Uh, Bizarre turn of events indeed, but there you go. So, in an earlier now civil court hearing, lawyers from the museum described how it believes the suspect had altered internal records to try and cover his tracks. The suspect edited at least 83 digital internal records, which related to stolen, damaged, or even missing items the court had heard. And this is something else, the digitization of some of these records. Some of this stuff might have been catalogued back in, like, I don't know, 60, 70, 80, maybe 100 years ago. Who knows? But now you've got to go through all that again and sort of re-digitize it. So it's a big, big, massive undertaking. But it continues saying much of the collection does remain uncatalogued, and many records, including those of gemstones, do not have photos. They said, we always think that all these people are decent people in the museums, and if someone there abuses this with this lack of record keeping, what can you do? You will expect people not to steal, but you can give them a full body search every time they leave the museum. Mr. Brand said that the key is, of course, to catalogue everything. Trust is good, but control is even better. A second database must be created so that everything cannot be accessed by staff, so that it can be double checked, even if you have pieces in the catalogue that people can alter. So the British Museum was told at the end of 2023 to improve its records by an internal review following the thefts. Ultimately, he said it would spend approximately £10 million to try and document its entire collection and make sure it is available online within the next 5 years. The Metropolitan Police is obviously still investigating, but no arrests have been made. So it is good that most of this stuff is now being found again, and that these artifacts are being tracked down. But it is worth reiterating that a lot of people have the assumption that the like big artifacts sort of gone and had gone missing, when in reality it had been coins, gemstones, the small stuff you can, just put in your pocket or put in a bag. Uh, there is no yet any evidence that big stuff like statues or artworks or anything like that had gone missing. Uh, but who knows? Maybe if it hadn't been catalogued, maybe that's the case. But so far, that hasn't been the case. Then it is interesting to sort of follow up on this after obviously that initial reporting to see that actually they've been quite successful in managing to track down a lot of the stuff that had gone missing. So, as always, let me know what you think down below in the comments. And of course, as always, we'll see you all next time.